I hope everybody is having a good evening. And I just want to say that I really appreciate everybody's attention and being here for such a vitally important topic. A cancer diagnosis is a true existential threat. When somebody faces something like this, it rocks their entire world. It's not just a diagnosis of getting a medicine and figuring out what to do. It's life altering and permeates through every part of somebody's life. And for that reason, supportive care programming is so important. A lot of times, patients with oncology diagnoses are given phenomenal more than standard of care, up to date, the best treatments available for their cancer. But in order to provide excellent cancer care, one really has to focus on the supportive care elements, things like financial issues, things like emotional distress, things like how do I manage stress, beauty issues, where do I go from here, how do I exercise, how do I live my best life, and how do I work and tell my friends, amongst the myriad of issues that oncology patients face. So for that reason, we are very excited to have this first of our three-part series on what to expect if you have been given a cancer diagnosis. No doubt visits with oncologists are limited, and so we're hoping that this will provide a lot of helpful information for you. So we are going to move forward now to our first piece, which is discussing finances when you have a cancer diagnosis. I'm very pleased to introduce Miss Ruby Wesley, who is a financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual, who will be talking about financial issues that impact cancer patients and how to approach and manage these. And one thing I want you all to keep in mind, either for yourself or a family member, is that this is really going on some kind of trip. Once the diagnosis is made, you can call it a trip, a sojourn, a journey, whatever you want, but regardless of the outcome of it, it's important that it's a good journey. And all the things that we're talking about today help to make it that way. So I'd like to introduce Miss Ruby Wesley now.
Ruby, you can go ahead and go.
I think we're just waiting for audio.
You're live.
Dr. Sibley, thank you so much for the opportunity to share on such an important matter. So, in thinking about finances and financial planning with the subject matter, you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with supportive care? Um, and, when you receive a diagnosis of cancer, the last thing you probably wanted to talk about or even think about our budget, spreadsheets. So I promise I'm not going to bore you with those things. My job today really is to shed some light on the importance of how your finances can support you as you navigate through this life event. So if you could advance the slide. What do you want for your future? That is an interesting question. When you're dealing with being told that you have cancer or dealing with a loved one who's been diagnosed with cancer, you're thinking like, I'm not thinking about the future right now. We're trying to get through the moment. We're trying to get through the day, tomorrow. But really, what is this question asking? It's really pinpointing what's important, what matters. And you think about the things that are important to you, the people that you care about, the people that you support, those that are supporting you. Your finances, your money is the one tool that allows you to be able to provide those things, provide support, provide care, um, you know, provide support for your goals. So my role today is to share with you 4 principles around how a strong financial foundation can help you navigate through these life challenges. So we're going to talk about 4 principles today. You can advance: cash flow, savings, protection, and debt. And so we start with cash flow. What is that really talking about? It's taking time to take an inventory of what you've got in place. Once you've got an understanding of what's coming in, what's going out, you're getting into a place of where you know, like, what does it take to run the household? Thinking about that question, right? What do you want for your future? What matters? It's really what is needed to support the lifestyle that you have created, that you are in the process of building. And you can advance the slide, that you are in the process of building. What does it take? So you want to have a general idea of what's coming in and what's going out. And that's going to give you clarity. Going through the process of budgeting and really outlining what is your money doing gives you so much sense of where everything is positioned. It gives you some sense of organization. And so if you're in a state where you are going to be incapacitated, or you're in a state of mind to where, like, dealing with the finances is going to be handled by someone else who's supporting you, it's so important that you have an awareness of what it takes to run these things, and that it's organized so that they're also not dealing with trying to figure out where is everything, who needs to get paid, who needs to take care of your daughter's ballet class. It helps to alleviate the financial stress so that you have time and space to focus on your personal healing. And we can advance. And you can keep going, just flow with me. So here's a quick guideline on, if you need some parameters of how to structure your budget, here's just a quick guideline around how to do that. 60% primarily is going to go towards, like, running the household. 20%, you're putting funds aside for your future self. You're saving for that break the glass money should something come up more immediately. And then you got a little bit carved out to make sure you're enjoying fruits of the labor. This is just a parameter, just a guideline. But the whole point is going through the exercise of initially really just getting understanding of what's in the playing field, is so that you have a good idea of what it takes to run the household. You know what's coming in and you know what's going out. And so when everything is going smoothly and great, there's really no concerns. But it's typically when there's a life event that happens, a visit to the doctor, receiving bad news, is where the worry sets in. What if I get sick? What if I get hurt? What if something happens to me? And that's where we move into the next principle. And we start talking and thinking about, well, what can I do to mitigate some of these things that can happen in life to throw off the budget? And so let's move on. And that's where we start thinking about those protection tools. So Social Security Administration says 1 in 4 Americans are going to get disabled at some point during their career. That's a pretty significant number. So it's critically important that you put provisions in place to secure your income. That is the one thing that keeps everything moving. And so when you're going through a period of crisis, what we know is that the bills don't stop. The mortgage needs to get paid, right? The car note needs to get paid, tuition. Those things continue while you're now trying to figure out, how do we adjust to this new phase, this new challenge that we're going through? It could be short-term, it could be long-term, it could be unknown. But what you know is that that lifestyle needs to be maintained. So that segment of your life is still under control and not compounding with navigating this new challenge that you're faced with. So when you are we talked about, doing that inventory, right? So that inventory continues to understanding, what are some of the benefits that you have as well, right? We've got our cash flow, we've got to understand what's coming in, what's going out. And now let's continue to explore what is available to you for you to leverage and use. So most employers offer what's called, if you can just go back just a second, thank you. Most employers offer a group disability benefit. That group disability benefit is going to be that blue area that you see in the pie chart. It covers 60% of your income. So let's say you bring in $10,000 a month, roughly 6,000 now will be provided through an employer benefit. That benefit does get taxed. So let's just bring that number down to 4,000, right? We've got crisis on one hand, and we've got bills and lifestyle that needs to be maintained on the other. So your disability benefit is really important for you to know what if something happens, how much money are you going to get from your employer to help with continuing to ensure that your financial obligations continue to be met. So going from your full income down to 60% and then even less once taxes comes out, there's a gap there. So that yellow gap is the planning that you can do to supplement what your employer offers. Combine the two so that you're in the best position to ensure that those bills continue to get paid. Without that, we see situations where maybe a spouse or supportive person in your life now has to take up a second job to make sure ends meet. It could be an adult child. We've heard stories where children have to drop out of school and take up a job or be around more to help with the young ones because maybe you're a primary caretaker and not in a position to do that anymore. So this type of planning, sometimes we hear financial planning and it's separate from what's happening in life, when the reality is that they're all intermingled and combined together. So super important to understand as you're doing that inventory, what benefits do you have available to you? So we can advance. Moving on to life insurance. So continuing with the thoughts of, well, what can happen to my money, right? I have an understanding of what the household needs. And now we're going through the process of mitigating the impact of those life events that could derail us financially. And unfortunately, in some cases, illnesses are terminal and they can lead to transitioning. And you can't replace a life, right? But what you can do that's so powerful with life insurance is that you can ensure, going back to that initial question of what you want for your future, what matters, what's important to you, that those dreams, those people that you care about, what you support, what you love, can be carried on through your life insurance with proper planning. Your life insurance should not just be a number. It should have purpose and meaning. And so we'll use the example of someone maybe making $100,000 a year. Maybe they need $1 million of insurance. But it can't just be just a number, right? Like I said, the number should have meaning and purpose. So let's say the individual has a $500,000 mortgage. And so that's half of your life insurance benefit right there. If they have 2 young children that they hope to send off to college, that's another $150,000 a piece. So that's $300,000. Now we're at $800,000. Like, when you have purpose behind your life insurance planning, then it has meaning, it has purpose, it has a goal of what to do, and it's no longer just a number. And so we're at 800,000. I hope you all are tracking with me, and there's 200,000 left from that $1 million. And so those funds can be available for that spouse or partner that you have or who's dependent on you financially to now have some time to readjust. They're not having to pick up another job to continue to make ends meet, go to work the next day. Maybe they want to take some time off to figure out what is life going to look like from now on. Maybe we need to take a vacation with the kids and just figure things out. So you're enabling and allowing your loved ones time to readjust, grieve, and figure life out. So very important to just have purpose behind your insurance planning. With your employer, employer benefits are great, especially if they're involuntary, they don't cost you anything, but they're designed to just give you something. Most times they're not enough to cover the full need. As you saw on the pie chart with this example, $1 million, likely an employer benefit, it's going to maybe do like one-time salary, or it'll be a set number, but you want to make sure that you're also doing your own supplemental planning so that you have sufficient coverage. Going back to that very first step of understanding what does it take to run the household and ensuring that that coverage is enough to maintain that household for a certain period of time. So we can, actually, before we advance, I just want to touch on a couple more points because it's really important to understand what is the scope of this. Interesting fact about life insurance is half of Americans, 50% roughly, are either underinsured or don't have insurance. And the number one reason for that is cost. They think it's too expensive. So to put things in perspective, you know, I showed the breakdown of the budget. Generally, 2 to 3% of your budget is all that's needed to provide some coverage for your income replacement and your life insurance. 2 to 3%, especially if you have an employer benefit, they're covering some of it. So you're going to dedicate 2 to 3%. That's it, to cover that the rest of the 97%. So it's definitely affordable. So get information and make sure you structure it with purpose. And last piece on the life insurance is an important feature called waiver of premium. Primarily, you may see this on the individual plans. I'm not sure. I don't think it's available so much with employer plans. But what this does is if your physician deems you disabled, the insurance company will waive the premium. So that's another bill alleviated from your budget. So it's important when you're going through a financial crisis to have an awareness of what you have, because there are tools that you can leverage to help, you know, ease and get through the process a little bit better. So moving on to our next principle, savings, investing in savings. When you have clarity on maybe it takes $6,000 to run your household. Just using an example, you know, we say 10,000, you bring in 10,000 a month, 6,000 it takes to run the household roughly. Once you have that idea, now you can set a more intentional emergency fund. This is your break the glass money. This is your first line of defense. It's not just, hey, let me just put enough aside to cover the mortgage, to cover the rent. It's really just to ensure that there's continuity in the lifestyle. When you receive news from your doctor that causes you to pause, you need time to pause and plan and figure things out. And if you've got an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months is recommended. That time says, okay, everything financially that is required to maintain lifestyle to run is going to continue. So you've got time to pivot and figure things out and not go into panic mode. We're going to touch on one more principle. And if you can advance, if you can just continue. And let's get to investing. So we're not going to so much talk about the wealth building side of investing, but just understanding that if we skip some of those first steps, if the emergency fund's not there, you don't have the sufficient coverage for your income through your disability planning, what we sometimes see is that if we see folks like having to liquidate their investment accounts, their retirement account. So hopefully that's not a situation that you find yourself in, but if you do, talk with your tax professional, talk with your HRC if you can qualify for hardship exemption so that you don't get hit with that pre-retirement penalty. And last but not least is debt. That's the fourth thing. You just want to have an idea of what you already currently owe, because you may find yourself having additional medical bills added. And so being able to navigate the scope of what your debt profile looks like will help you make some adjustments, maybe contact your creditors, see what you can reduce down as far as making minimum payments so that you can manage any new debt a lot easier. And these things are just easier to do once you have an idea of what your debt picture looks like. So those are the 4 principles I wanted to share with you all. Hopefully that has added some additional insights and information for you. Just 1 or 2 more thoughts along the lines of just understanding your financial pictures, just making sure you have a trusted person. Have that backup person that you can count on, that you can rely. If you're incapacitated, somebody's going to need to know where to find everything. And, like I mentioned before, if it's organized, it's a lot easier for them to navigate that and make planning attorney if you need to take those additional steps. So I'm going to turn it over to our coordinators. I think we're going to move into Q&A.
Ruby, that was absolutely fantastic. I learned a lot, and that was very practical, and I loved the examples with numbers that you provided to people. We have a question in the chat that Miss Linda Cobb will be reading out for us. Linda?
Thank you. Thank you, Ruby. If you can hear me, the question is, when one is not certain how long they will live after metastatic cancer is diagnosed, who needs to be involved in financial planning? Do I need to warn my wealth manager, CPA, lawyer? I am particularly interested in preparing the remaining spouse alongside adult children with existing grandchildren.
Absolutely. I think the sooner the better. Those that are important to you definitely need to be involved and have some idea and awareness of what are the assets. You want to certainly notify your wealth manager. They're going to help guide you. Your wealth manager, your CPA, these are all professionals that are designed to help with the financials, the asset movement. There's tax implications. There's a lot of, the more that you can work through going through the scenario of what if I transition, how do you want your assets transferred, looping in the estate planning attorney, the easier that transition. So all the individuals that you mentioned are critical. And if you can coordinate a meeting where everyone's talking together, those professionals, then you're getting the best of the wealth piece, the tax piece. Then you can have the conversation with the key family members, not everyone, the key family members that are going to be primarily receiving assets and in charge of assets, and have everyone understand what their roles are and who the go-to people are.
So now we are moving on to another fantastic speech and speaker who also will emphasize the role of control. We are going to be talking about care navigation now. And the one thing I want you all to take away from this is that these pieces of information, everything that you learn and do in advance, helps to maintain your agency and control through this process. And that is vital for good care and for a very good experience. So now I'm delighted to announce Sarah Knopp, who is a cancer care coach, who will be providing a wonderful overview on cancer navigation.
Thank you, Dr. Sibley, and thank you, Miss Ruby. That was wonderful. Before I start, really do take care of your finances right away and start on that immediately, because we have like a 3-week gap between diagnosis and when you get your first treatment. And mentally speaking, you're not going to be that strong in a month. So you really want as much taken care of before you start treatment as possible. And then thank you all for coming to listen to us. I'm really sorry that you're in this group or in this position because it's the best group you never wanted to be in. And it can be really, really lovely. So my cancer journey started in 2014. I had been traveling throughout Europe to become a master sommelier. So I had this great, great lifestyle. I'd be in Bordeaux one day and I'd be in Budapest the next day, trying wines, meeting people. And I had this lump in my breast. And I was like, all right, I get cysts a lot. I'm not worried about it. 3 months later, I still had this lump and I started to get itchy. I'm thinking, oh, I must have got some sort of rash or a bug. Because, I was on a train overnight and everybody's on the train. So I'm like, I'm not worried about it. And then I got to the point where I was sleeping 14 or 16 hours every single night. My friends are like, it's so great that you come to our house and you're so comfortable you can sleep this long. And I'm thinking, that's really great too. So I'm at the end of my trip. I get my dream job of launching a product line from France here in America. So I'm headed home. I'm like, this is good. I get home. I'm not feeling better. I'm actually starting to feel worse. I'm sleeping 20 hours a day. So I'm like, all right, go to the doctor. The doctor looks at me and she's like, you got to go to the ER right now. I'm like, I can't. I got a job interview. I'm sorry, I just got the job. So now I've got to start working. They're like, no, you got to go. So she set it up for me. So I go to the hospital and I'm literally stuck in the machine, the mammogram machine. And the tech comes up and hugs me. She goes, I will pray for you. And I'm thinking, oh, this really is not good. This is not good at all. And it's hard. I was 41 years old, got my dream job, and now I have metastatic breast cancer, and I was given 6 weeks to live, which I am not a fan of rushing out there to see how long you're going to live. But my oncologist at that time was like, no, I have to tell you this because you have to get your finances in order. And she was great because she also said, you need to tell everyone that you love them. She's like, cancer is this gift where, especially when you're metastatic, you're terminal, you're going to die. And she goes, you can plan for the best dinners with all of your friends and you have the opportunity to tell them why and how you love them. And it was so hard to write those letters. And I have to admit, I'm 10 years of consistent chemo. And every year I update those letters. So when I die, there'll be a group of people who get a packet from me every year telling why I love them and how I found to love them. And I find myself a lot of time going back through these because it's a lot of good memories for me. And also when you're in chemo, the brain works for 2 or 3 weeks and then you got your infusion and the brain doesn't work for 5 days. So it's really fun to go back and have all these different views of my cancer journey. All right, so that was over 150 rounds of chemo. So I know of 6 other people in the country who've had more chemo than I have. 100 different scans. I also had brain surgery, which was a surprise, and very happy to have all those surgeries done at Stanford. I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed the cancer journey through Stanford. It is my 4th place to get chemotherapy. I'm on my 6th oncologist, and Dr. Sibley is my oncologist. She's wonderful. But the best time has been here at Stanford. They're on it. They exceed the standards of protocol. And they're just here. If you need mental help, they have it. If you need a social worker, they can get you in touch with a social worker. But make sure that you like your oncologist and the care team, because they're the ones going to keep you alive. Not only physically alive, they're going to help you navigate outside sources, like complementary therapies. This has helped some people, this has helped other people. And everybody's different. Now, the one thing I do want to say is curiosity kills cancer. And whether that's your curiosity as the individual with cancer or the researcher, because somebody out there is so curious as to why the body had a mishap that they want to figure it out. And thank God that they do, because we're not dying as readily and as quickly as we used to. It's not a death sentence, which is also really important that you take care of your finances, because I went from having to live in 6 weeks, and then it was a year. So I'm like, I'm spending money. I'm having a good time. I am 10 years into treatment every 3 weeks. Like, you can't have a full-time job and get treatment. So take care of your finances, or take care of your finances, but also take care of your caregivers. You need them more than they need you. And they're working, they're taking care of the household. They're just as stressed out as you are, and you're going to fight. So if you can actually, at the beginning, when you're making your financial plan, also sit down and say, every Wednesday night, my caregiver gets to go to dinner or the spa, because A, the cancer patient needs alone time, and B, so does the caregiver. And it's really important to take care of your caregiver. It's hard. Cancer is hard. And it's so hard to think I have to get up and do the dishes. But then once you get up and you start doing stuff, you find out you have more energy. And you know what? I walked a mile today. Tomorrow I can walk a mile and a block. And it's so important that you have a routine. Really important that you exercise. It takes care of nausea. It helps you eat. It gets you out of your house. It gets you out of your head. Just remember, you can do more than you think you can. And if you have excessive fatigue, talk to your doctor. Maybe they have a pill or a prescription that will get you mentally sound for the next doctor visit or dinner with friends. Respect your care team. In the age of Google, and everybody wants to research, and everybody comes up with this different study and all the disinformation out there, your doctor is an expert in cancer. You'll become an expert in yourself, but don't argue with your care team that you know better. I will send doctors, if I have a new study, I'll cite the study and send them my questions for the study 3 or 4 days before I actually go to the doctor, because we have 20 minutes with the oncologist and we have a lifetime of questions. Also, if it is a good study, they can help take that study and share it with other patients, and maybe it'll help somebody else. Be proactive. You do need to do your research. You need to learn the vocabulary so that you can have a good interactive conversation with your oncologist. That being said, talk to your nurses about your problems, because they will help you learn the proper terminology. They'll tell you how to structure your questions so you don't fumble through it and waste 10 minutes of your time. Do not look at the life expectancy statistics, because there's new medicines every year, and with AI, they're going to come faster. What we see for the statistics online are a year or two behind, so they're not valid. They're a good marker and a good gauge. Like, maybe in 6 months I'll go to Europe. Maybe I won't. I also do a lot of international studies, like what are they doing in Poland or Brazil or Australia? Because there's different standards of care everywhere, and we need to include those. Like, I had one cancer patient I was helping in Germany, and they didn't have a survivorship program for afterwards. So say you go through, you're done with the initial chemo, you've been there 3 months, and then they're like, bye, have a good life. And you're like, what am I going to do? Because you have this huge stress from no longer receiving treatment. Like, is it going to come back? How often should I get scans? So, we came up with the protocol of every 6 months you get this scan. In a year, you get this scan. And it's just really nice for everyone to know where you're at and where you need to be. That being said, with research too, peers, care teams, and support groups. Not only do you need to, everyone should get in a cancer support group, because they're not going to be overly sympathetic with you. They will have compassion, but we're not going to be like, oh, I'm so sorry this has happened to you. We're like, yeah, so it's going to happen for the next 6 months. This is how you deal with it. And it's very, very refreshing to have honest conversations with peers. People who've been there, people who are going to be there. Also, your nurses. Nurses are fantastic, and you get a lot more time with your nurses than you do your doctor. So tell them every little thing, even if you think you're wasting your time, you're not. Because they're also building their database of things for their future customers, their clients, because the medicines are changing rapidly too, and they need to learn about them. You also need to find what makes you passionate about life and what's going to keep you going through treatment. Mine was travel. And in the last 10 years, I think I've been to Europe 40 times. I would literally go to treatment with my suitcase packed. I would get my infusion, go sleep 12 hours on the plane going to Europe, wake up. I'm not going to have jet lag because I just slept 14 hours. And it gets you away from the medicine, away from being sick. It's really wonderful, but you have to keep your passion alive so that you can continue doing treatment. It's hard. One other thing that was really helpful is to make a spreadsheet of your friends and their strengths. Because there's some friends you're going to want to call for emotional support, and you don't want to call your CPA for emotional support. They're going to send you down the wrong path. You're also not going to go out with your dancing partner and tell her about your finances. You're just heartbreak and stress that you don't need. And I literally have a spreadsheet next to my phone on who to call when, because I've made a mistake and I've lost friends because they responded in a way I wasn't expecting and viewed it negatively, and they thought I was dumping on them. And it was just this massive miscommunication and disinformation that I didn't need during chemotherapy, because it's hard. And then you have to be nice to yourself. You have to say, you know what? Today I'm going to stay in bed because I'm tired. That being said, get out of bed and walk 2 miles a day. It's the best thing for nausea. It's the best thing for your brain. It's easy to walk with a friend because you're not looking at each other, so you can tell them intimate details and you don't have to look at their reaction, because, you know, as fun as that is to shock people, it's not always that great for them. Yeah. One thing I found is I'm blatantly honest now about everything, because you don't have time. Like, I like wit, but there's a time to be witty and there's a time to just say exactly what you need. And figuring that out is a process. It truly is. All right. So your caregivers and your friends' imagination is your worst enemy, because you're living it. You know if your stomach hurts or you have a headache. They don't. They anticipate that everything that could go wrong is going wrong in this moment in time. They're nervous. They're going to smother you. They're going to hover over you. And you're like, just leave me alone. But they're afraid they're going to die, because their role now is to be your caregiver. So you really need to talk to people in those first 3 weeks before the treatment begins about what you want and what you expect, and then how you can navigate the differences of what you thought to what's actually happening in your body. It's also great to do this with children. Like, don't wait to tell your children until you're in chemo and you've lost your hair. They need time to process it as well. And be nice. Even when you don't want to be nice, take 10 seconds, bite your tongue, and then say what you need to say. Thank you for listening. I think now we're going to go no questions, which is great. If you have some at the end, I think we're coming back. But otherwise, back to Dr. Sibley.
Sarah, that was so wonderful. A lot of great life advice there. And I especially like the part about focusing on your passion or purpose. I think that's guidance everybody needs every day to live their best life. So thank you very much. Okay, guys, we're going to move on now to exercise and oncology. And I am going to provide you guys with some tidbits about exercise in the oncology space, and then we are going to have our real practical session with Mr. Ruben Chang. So just to reiterate that cancer is a complex disease consisting of many steps and processes. Last year, there were about 2 million cases in the US with about 612,000 deaths. Currently, there are over 18 million cancer survivors in the US, and we anticipate there being around 22 million by 2030 and 26 million by 2040. So we expect the number of people who have beat this to grow. And just a reminder, just a motivator, that nearly all cancer survivors are not meeting the recommended exercise and nutrition guidelines for having had a cancer diagnosis. Now, just a reminder that the most common cancer in men is prostate. The most common cancer in women is breast, and these numbers are for the United States. And these are followed by lung and colon and rectal in men and women. And the death curves are a little bit reversed. Lung, unfortunately, leads both, followed by prostate for men, followed by breast for women, colon and rectal for men. And then interestingly now, with changes in our diet and other features in society, pancreas is now a leading cause of death. Now, just a reminder that there are modifiable risk factors for cancer development in general. Around 40% of cancers are related to one of these factors that I have listed here. And we feel that around 18% of cancer cases and 16% of deaths are related to a combination of the things that I have listed here: lack of exercise, body weight, diet factors, and alcohol use. Now, very few studies exist that correlate exercise activity during cancer therapy with outcomes. We all have anecdotal patient reports of patients who exercise during therapy and what symptoms they have felt. And we all have anecdotal reports from our clinic of patients doing better. But in terms of the literature, most of it has focused on symptom benefit for patients while they're getting chemotherapy, immunotherapy, or radiation therapy, or some other form of cancer therapy. In general, we have enough data to say that regular physical activity is associated with improved tolerance of therapy, less joint pain, improved balance, improved mental functioning, the so-called chemo brain symptoms, improved mental health, improved mood, depressive symptoms. Many of us strongly feel that, based on the literature from survivorship, that regular exercise during cancer therapy will lead to an improved prognosis from cancer and improved overall survival, and a decreased risk of death from cancer. So just to reiterate, you do get positive health effects from any amount of physical activity. Now, just a reminder for all of you that physical activity means 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity, moderate to vigorous, moderate intensity activity, or 75 to 100 minutes of vigorous activity. Children and adolescents need the amount listed here, and just a reminder to limit sedentary behavior as much as possible. Ruben will give you some ideas of what constitutes moderate and vigorous physical activity, but just keep that number in mind, 75 to 100 per week. Now, I'm going to go through some of the pivotal trials that talked about some benefits for patients on chemotherapy or radiation therapy during with exercise implemented into their programming. Again, just a reminder, most of the literature has focused on symptom improvement and so forth. One of the pivotal trials was from the Journal of Clinical Oncology in 2007 and featured around 240 women with breast cancer who were equally randomized to a control group, aerobic activity, and resistance training for 17 weeks. It actually lasted from anywhere from 9 to 24 weeks. The endpoint was cancer-related quality of life as determined by a particular scale that we use. We use a lot of scales in oncology to qualify and standardize somebody's symptoms. And the results in this group showed those in the aerobic group had significantly, and that means statistically significantly, improved self-esteem, preserved aerobic fitness, and maintained their body fat levels versus increased them. Those in the resistance arm also noted significantly improved self-esteem, muscle strength, and lean body mass. The muscle strength actually improved by 25 to 35% in this study. And the peak oxygen consumption, which measures how much oxygen somebody can use, the maximum rate that a body can use during exercise, also was better in the aerobic group. One very important feature that this study also showed was statistically significant higher chemo completion rates in the resistance group. That's actually and near statistically significant, that's not what the N is there, but near significant chemo completion rates in the aerobic group. That's really important because when we give people chemo, we dose it a particular way, and the dose is designed for maximum cell kill versus tolerance in order to kill the cancer best. So you want people to get in as many of the doses as possible. Another very nice study in prostate cancer randomized 120 men equally, 121 men who were receiving radiation therapy. Some were receiving something called androgen deprivation therapy. That has its own side effects on bone, the cardiovascular system, mood, and so forth. Their endpoint was looking at fatigue per the FACT fatigue scale. And they also looked at other things like testosterone levels, blood hemoglobin levels, certain lipid levels, and so forth. But the primary endpoint was fatigue. So in the resistance arm, there was statistically significant improvement in fatigue, quality of life, aerobic fitness, improved peak oxygen consumption, upper and lower body strength, and the other things that I have listed there. In the aerobic group, there was improved fatigue and fitness and oxygen consumption. So these are things that help people tolerate therapy, help them continue therapy, help their well-being and quality of life as they go forward with this, because getting cancer therapy is really a job. It's a part-time job or a full-time job, depending on what you're getting. And you want to enjoy the job as much as possible. And so these are things that right now are considered ancillary. I am hopeful at some point will be considered part of primary cancer therapy, but that make the journey much more enjoyable. And one more thing I wanted to feature was a study that looked at whether a program can affect cancer-related fatigue and muscle strength. And this was a group with breast cancer who were receiving either radiation therapy or anti-hormonal therapy. And they were randomized to either a control group or a specially developed exercise program with bands and walking. And again, there was statistically significant improvement in chemo-related fatigue, cancer-related fatigue, I should say, and cancer-related fatigue interference with activities, and also increased body strength in the intervention arm. So again, you can see the plethora of studies. I've just highlighted 3. These are 3 of the better ones. There are a variety of studies in this field, but they're heterogeneous in terms of the data, in terms of the patient population, the type of cancer treatment. So we have a study going right now that's also looking at a guided exercise program for patients who are on chemo, anti-hormonal therapy, and radiation therapy. And we are going to be reporting various patient-reported outcomes and objective measures of health for our population. Now, most of the data for exercise and cancer is in the survivorship area. Most of it is in breast, prostate, colon, or all cancers together. As I mentioned before, this data is also heterogeneous because the studies are varied according to how many people participate. What type of exercise do they do? Is it aerobic, resistant? How much do they do? How do they integrate it with other activity? We just don't have a lot of good control studies. On that note, there is a lot of great data for the cancers that I have listed here. Most of the participants have been from around the world, but you can see mostly in Western Europe, the US, or in developed countries. So we definitely have a lack of data in low to middle income countries around the world. Now, I wanted to highlight this because it is remarkable. The cancer-specific mortality reduction in various studies is just tremendous, ranging from 28 to 70%. These are all very good, high-quality, controlled studies. These are phase 3 studies. In all-cause mortality, that means reduction of death related to all causes as opposed to just cancer. You can see there are very impressive risk reductions as well. So there are many different ways that exercise works on cancer. I'm going to highlight just a few of them, and the purpose of this picture is really to show you there are a lot of ways that exercise works. So look at it as like this amazing medicine that works on so many different features, including the blood supply of the tumor, maximizing your immune system to best fight the tumor. When you have cancer and exercise, things get activated in your muscles. Different interleukins and chemicals get activated in your muscles that go to help fight cancers and regulate your immune system. There are various effects on your DNA and on genes, and various effects on insulin and other things in the body, including on different tumor suppressor genes and the tumor microenvironment. So this is just a large list for you to appreciate how many different ways exercise works on cancer. Now, I want you to think about what you can do in your life. You don't have to share this list with anybody. Think about what barriers you have regarding exercise. Think about what you can realistically do and how many times per week. And think about how you can come up with an action plan. And I strongly suggest people to give themselves a reward. Give yourself a reward for working out once, and then 3 times per week, and then maybe 3 weeks in a row. And Ruben now will give you some good information about how to turn this into a reality. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Ruben Chang, who is a certified personal trainer, who has a lot of great advice for us here.
Good evening, folks. My name is Ruben Chang, and I have to thank Dr. Sibley for inviting me here. Basically a lifetime advocate of exercise, and it's long story short, since I could walk, with 5 siblings, I had to find my own spot in the table. Did a lot of little struggling and such like that, so physical movement's been kind of like all my life. I've had some serious asthma when I was a child, and exercise overcame me, and I cannot say enough about it. Decades of movement, and as I say, the adage is motion is lotion. And so I've had some experience with these ailments, cancer patients and survivors, stroke recovery, Lou Gehrig disease. One thing I need to let you folks know, and you probably just have heard this over and over, the whole idea is like, it's just willpower. That's first and foremost. Having some sense of due diligence. You're going to have to take account of kind of some accountability, a responsibility to be well for you, for yourself, for your loved ones. The other thing too, of course, having support from the loved ones, from the family members, good friends, close relationships and whatnot. Dr. Sibley is representing the Stanford Medicine Health Group. It's awesome. Just to reach out to all these folks, and that's the real key. Same with things like the stroke recovery groups. Being in the same kind of boat and understanding that you're not alone. And basically the whole situation is to understand that there's help out there, and there's support, and there's assistance. And that's really critical, and especially when you're going through these meds and chemo. It can be very much a life-changing experiences, you know? So that's kind of like what I would just say, look for help, and more or less just go ahead, just feel free to reach out, get the assistance out there, and it's really critical mask. We're all in this together, you know, and so this is the whole idea, is getting that support, and that really helps a lot. And it's out there, and don't feel free that you're kind of like being some sort of a pesticide or some sort, and just, you know, bugging people and such. Sometimes it is better to be proactive than being more sedentary. In terms of the exercise, it's really hard for me to tell you what to do or suggest. It's kind of like, the thing is, like, everyone's in a different boat. You know, you could have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. It all depends where you're at. Some can walk, some can't. Some is basically having different situations with organs and such. So my take is basically just take it a step at a time. Easy movements is always critical. I personally like compound action. Basically, you're looking at something along the lines of just a lunge and just pull back, right? Just kind of just lunge and pull back. So it's just basically a multiple muscle group that's taking place. I do a squat here, right? Just like you're sitting in a chair, very functional exercise. Just come down and up. You can just combine. Go ahead and do this here, right? You come up. So even if it's a partial squat, you can basically do an isometric and just hold up against a wall or so, and just a wall sit. A little bit less stress, but it's a lot of legs, a lot of upper body. It's going to be rested on the wall. Come on up. You can basically do some balance exercises if the proprioception is an issue. You're just kind of just thinking on a chair or such, and just lift, right? Hold. That's work, right? And just come down slowly. Just something very basic, and then move on and elevate. You have to kind of bring in a little bit more of a progression, and maybe something along this line here, right? So I just take a leg out. I can do it dynamically, and I can take it up and down, right? It's just so something along that line. It doesn't have to take any kind of like extensive equipment and such. It's just body weight. In terms of the resistance exercises Dr. Sibley is mentioning, that's just a fancy word of loading. It's an overload. So I can go ahead and get a 10-pound dumbbell, right? So I can do a squat and come up with a hammer curl. So I now have a little bit more load. I'm building muscles, right? I'm getting the fibers activated, getting a little bit more work, strength, a little hypertrophy. It's all good. So that's kind of the situation here. But again, it's just basically some sort of progression depending on where the individual is. And of course, we already know all the benefits of this so-called exercise for cancer therapy. So even if you were not having issues of this nature, movement is always great. So I think that's really the key components, is a progression with different kinds of exercises, having some suggestions as far as a program design and making it happen. Specific exercises, of course, is also, you have to make an implementation for cardiovascular conditioning, the overload, the resistance training, getting some movement with the flexibility, range of motion. It's all encompassing. So the whole idea is trying to make it happen with, a whole big ball of wax here, including all the components of being fit, and just staying and getting nice, kind of like safe, more or less progression. We don't do anything too soon or too fast. It's just an adaptation that would take place with the human body. So that's conditioning, and doing it properly, safely, so no injuries take place and go into any kind of like so-called regression. So progression is the key, of course, in doing it in a safe modality. So that's kind of my take. In everything, like I said, just it starts more or less from just, you have to just start somewhere. And to me, I think for my experiences, kind of like in health and wellness and such, folks that I have been kind of influenced by, it's more or less just kind of thinking like, if there's a will, there's a way. You got to make it happen, because I can provide some instruction 2-3 days a week, an hour or whatnot, but what are you doing the other days, right? So you have to really just kind of buy into the concept that you're your own advocate. You also have to put a little bit of accountability, make things happen, and do this more or less with frequency. And this was part of the so-called mindset, if you will, understanding that there's due diligence here, to put your foot forward and just progress. And it's, I know it's not easy, and it's always easier to get lazier and just, thinking along the lines, okay, I'll do it tomorrow or whatnot, and just kick the can. But, you're just your own advocate, making things happen. And it's really very important to have that kind of, I guess, outlook or mindset. This is where it's all at. It's all within what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, how bad you want this, right? This is kind of maybe attaining your goals. And that's the key that I've seen for a lot of the survivors and the folks that actually recover from their ailments. I think that's very important to never dismiss. And I don't need to go too far on that, but of course, the diet also is very important as well. Eating correctly, eating nutrient-dense foods and such like that. Things are unfortunately tasting too good. Usually are the ones you want to stay away from, okay?
So can you describe what is a moderately intense exercise and what is a vigorous exercise, just so everybody is on the same page, please?
Yeah, of course. Basically, it's kind of like a situation. I think in terms of my experience, it's really about your perceived exertion. So we all have different, if you will, athletic backgrounds. We're all athletes, really, but to different levels, right? So it's an idea like moderate to me could be very different from what you interpret. And so, as I mentioned, the whole aspect of conditioning in kind of that so-called progression, you have to start somewhere. So in terms of the moderation, if you feel like you're over the top, you just feel like you're breathless. You feel that the load, if you're doing some resistance training, is too difficult, and you're hurting on the third repetition doing a hammer curl or bench press or such, you know that's too much too soon, right? So the idea is you really want to be challenged. For my experiences, again, I think we're looking into more or less kind of a so-called light overload. It's nothing too extreme. And you want to provide with more frequency. So maybe about 20 repetitions of sorts for an exercise, right? So it's very, very mild, and it's basically looking for muscular endurance. And that's the build-up plan for wellness. And then basically, again, for some other individual, whether basically it's someone's more experienced and such like that, then again, just kind of an idea, just a general gauge. Did that 15, 20 reps feel good, And it's okay, yeah, all right, I could probably do 30, maybe 25. Then that light load is that light. It may be a little bit more intensity, a little more increased overload. And of course, higher intensity is a little bit more, okay, I hit it 20 reps, wow, that's okay. That's there, but I'm not like, I can't do the 21st, So it's kind of like it's relative a situation. But at the end of the so-called exercise routine and such, you do want to feel like you did some work and you felt, hey, this is a good day and there is some sort of experience I felt, but you don't want to walk out of the facility. It's like, I'm just crawling out back to the car. Okay, so that's kind of the idea. And it's, again, progression. In all this here really just takes time, and you have to invest in yourself with this. It just, the body will adapt. That's the so marvel of this. And I just can't say enough about the benefits of movement, and it's everything. It's you feel better, you sleep better. It's great for the cell count, and it's just like all encompassing. I even think better with good exercise, and whether it's aerobic, you have the strength training, just movement, and take a hike, go for half an hour, go 20 minutes. It's so refreshing, right? Being outdoors and such. So I think this is really the key, is just, motion is lotion. just keep going, and that's pretty much my, I guess, spiel on this exercise, so-called, I guess, ambassador movement here. Okay, thanks.
Very inspiring, wonderful. Now, we're going to go to our question and answer session now. Linda, do we have any questions that you would like to read out for all of our speakers?
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any resources at Stanford that we should be aware of for finding a personal trainer? Is that kind of thing available over Zoom when you are in treatment and immune compromised?
That is an excellent question. And I think I would guide that person to our Office of Cancer, our Cancer Supportive Care Services Clinic. We have a number listed on the web for that. We have a study in which we are incorporating physical activity into chemo treatment plans, but unfortunately that's not routinely available. I would review with your oncologist, and especially if he or she is at Stanford, and see if we could get you involved on our part of the study.
Great. And when I send out the deck to everybody who's online, I can do the hyperlink to that service.
Perfect. Thank you.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Linda.
We have some more questions. As a caregiver, how do you help the person with cancer deal with depression, and how to deal with their depression yourself?
I think in my case, I have a psychologist, a psychiatrist. I have a support group that I go to every Wednesday. So it's really important to get the doctor's care, but you can also get a lot of support from peers of people who've been through cancer already. But if you notice it's happening, first thing is go to your oncologist. They'll give you a little triage of where you should go, and then also look online, because my metastatic support group is actually through a different institution that accepts everyone, regardless if you're in California or not. We have some people in Virginia. And it is the one thing that changed my life is support groups and the mental clarity, the mental help.
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question that the panel asked?
How do they're interested in how to deal with the patient with depression and how that affects themselves as well as the patient?
Yeah, I'm again on the side of the exercise modality, and so it like I mentioned, that's just it's proven, right? Exercise is going to be great for the endorphins. It's going to be good for the whole entire body and system. Having possibly a caregiver that has some sort of exercise background, I think that would be extremely helpful. Whether it's for rehab or as far as just some very, like I mentioned, basic movements, that would also be a great tool to incorporate. And I think that would be extremely helpful in terms of having some additional assistance from the caregiver side.
Thanks, Ruben. The next one is for you, and you kind of answered it, I think, in that. What would you recommend for cancer patients in recovery who have trouble with motivation to exercise for health improvement?
Well, I think I touched on this briefly, as I said. You need to do it for yourself, and basically when you're, I guess if you want to use the word lack of motivation, lack of spirit, you just have to have that support group, the loved ones, the family, the friends, just having folks who will be a cheerleader on your side, and I find that's critical. You have some goals, right? I want to see my grandkids. I want to be able to visit my son. I want to go to my daughter's wedding across the nation. I have to travel. I need to get well. It's the same idea, kind of like, just why do I have to be in a size 2 dress for a wedding? It's like, really? Well, why don't we just try to think of just being healthy and well and lifetime, right? It's something, it's kind of a situation where if you're surrounded by support, it's going to spread, and it's almost a contagion where I'm in on this, right? So we're all in this, and because we're supporting each other and we love each other, so caring, sharing. All right.
May I add something, really quick?
Please.
Number one thing is don't isolate yourself. Like, if you're having a problem being motivated to go walking, have a different friend every day. And you don't have to do your whole exercise routine at one time. If you're exhausted, walk a half mile, sit down, have a coffee, then walk the other half, or do half the routine for squats. But don't isolate yourself, and caregivers should also get into a support group.
Thank you.
I want to add one piece on that, just tailing on all those wonderful comments. Give yourself a reward. So Sarah had just mentioned a coffee. Buy yourself something nice. Doesn't have to be expensive. Go somewhere nice. Go somewhere nice to eat. Just give yourself some reward that will motivate you every time you work out.
Thank you. And we have another one. Any alternatives for mood elevation if physical exercise is not an option?
There are, of course, medical options that we can do and that work well. You may be referring to meditation and other activities that don't involve actual pharmacology. I think meditation, I think being around people you like who make you feel good, as Sarah has alluded to, is very important. Doing things that you enjoy and doing things that give you a sense of purpose in this world is really important.
Thank you. And I will also include in the link, in our cancer care services, we have online Zoom classes for meditation, for yoga. There's a sound bath, so I'll be sure to include that in the notes if you are listening at home. At this time, we don't have any questions in the chat.
I have a question for Ruby. Ruby, are you with us?
Yes.
Do you think it's a good idea for people to create a medical fund account or have anything like that once they're diagnosed, or do you think that's extraneous?
So I did not hear the question.
You think it's a good idea to have a separate account for medical funds, or do you think that's just extraneous? Do you think that should be included in a savings account? What's your take on that for somebody with cancer?
Well, I think the important thing is whether you keep it in a separate account or it's in your bill account, is to have an understanding of what that medical bill amount is so that those funds are accounted for.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Any questions here in our live audience? Well, thank you guys very much. Any comments, final comments from our presenters? Thank you guys very much for attending. This has been very enlightening, and I hope that it will enrich your life, that you can use this information practically and make everything with your cancer journey better. If you have any questions, reach out to us. We have a QR code that we're posting for your feedback. We would really appreciate that, particularly as this is the inaugural version of this program. And so we would like to know what else you want to hear about as a cancer patient and who you want to hear from. So let us know what you think, and everyone get home safely and have a good evening.